The experiment I'm running this year is looking at how different herbage allowances influence dairy cow preference to be indoors or at pasture. So we have two different herbage allowances that the cows have free access to. A high herbage allowance with a cover of 3,000 plus or minus 500 kilograms of dry matter, and a low herbage allowance with a cover of just under 2,000 kilograms of dry matter. On a measurement week, one group of cows has access to either being indoors or being at pasture with a high herbage allowance, and another group of cows has access to either being indoors or being at pasture with a low herbage allowance. The next week, they'll swap over. In addition to looking at whether cows prefer to be indoors or at pasture, we're also trying to determine how important being at pasture is to these animals. It may be that they prefer being at pasture over being indoors, but we aren't sure how strong this preference is. The way we would determine this is by using what's called consumer demand theory. We basically put a price on gaining access to pasture and see if the cows are willing to pay this price. In this case, the price is having to walk different distances to gain access to pasture. So again, on a measurement week, the two groups can either choose between being indoors or at high or low herbage, but on the first week, these options will be available at 35 meters, which is the closest possible distance off the track, and on the second week, they will have to walk 265 meters, which is the furthest possible distance in this given area. We're also looking at feed intake using gallon bins, so each cow gets a specific bin and we measure how much TMR goes in and how much they refuse each day to get their intake for a day. We're also looking at how much grass they're eating using what's called the N-alkane method. So natural alkanes are the waxy cuticle found on the outside of plants. What we can do is dose them with an artificial alkane, C32, in their feed, and it's this sort of waxy, shiny substance here. And then we measure the total output in their feces to get their total intake. And then we can take the total intake and subtract it from the TMR intake that we've already measured to get how much grass they're eating. So this is a pretty interesting result because when you give animals access to pasture, there's the potential that their TMR intake is going to decrease, which could have a detrimental impact on milk yields. But what might happen is that they eat their TMR ration and then they go outside and eat grass as well, which could possibly increase milk yields. Finally, we have a group of cows that are being continuously housed during the experimental period, and we're recording their time budget as well as their feed intake using rick bins. This is important in light of the movement towards more US-style dairy farms that seem to be happening in the UK. We've seen this with the bid Naughton Dairies put in to have a mega dairy where animals were housed year-round. So we're going to compare both animal welfare measures, like behavior, and production measures, like feed intake or milk yields, with the cows that have access to pasture, to look at any differences that might have a detrimental or positive effect on both animal welfare and production value using an evidence-based approach.